Some people spend their entire lives actively scattering metaphorical thorns, never once grasping the crucial truth that cosmic balance operates with infinite patience, yet remains utterly incapable of blindness. They fail to realize that the very hands so busy constructing traps and spreading negativity will, with inevitable certainty, end up painfully cutting themselves on the destructive mess they deliberately created. This is not a complex mystery. It's the fundamental, core lesson you absorb the moment you consciously step into the role of a chosen one. Every single malicious attempt to block your rightful path automatically becomes the precise, necessary force that crushes the intentions and reputation of the ones who set the trap. Life possesses an elegant, self-correcting mechanism, where the script folds back onto itself so precisely that the critics who once heartily cheered for your total downfall are now left stumbling over the reverberating echoes of their own dark, miscalculated intentions. Chosen one, those individuals who maliciously tried to inflict lasting wounds upon you fundamentally misunderstood the ironclad mathematics of consequence. Their strategy was rooted in the flawed belief that their constant, poisonous whispers and deliberate undermining would serve to weaken your spirit and erode your resolve. What they never knew is that you were not built to simply endure pressure. You were genetically and spiritually engineered to convert that external pressure directly into razor-sharp precision and unshakable focus. They made a determined effort to dim your internal light, entirely unaware that some people are not merely fragile lamps that can be easily extinguished. They are instead uncontainable elemental wildfire, and wildfire does not simply fade away into nothingness. It patiently waits, it strategically gathers strength, it aggressively grows, and it eventually seeks out and utterly consumes the ones who foolishly provided the initial, destructive spark. This inherent, unstoppable nature is the central reason why your former enemies have been experiencing a growing, profound sense of unease lately. Your rise is not a loud, attention-seeking spectacle, but it carries an undeniable, tangible weight that cannot be ignored. It silently haunts their subconscious, much like the intense, electric stillness of the air acts as a warning before a devastating lightning strike finally hits. Their singular goal was to see you completely shaken, destabilized, and thrown off course. Instead of crumbling, you used their malice as a whetstone, emerging from the ordeal sharpened, focused, and more formidable than ever before. They tried to ruthlessly corner you into a small, suffocating space. Instead, you utilized that pressure to expand your capacity and vision, and now the very same people who relentlessly doubted your every calculated step cannot even manage to steady their own shaky footing on solid ground. Understand this crucial alignment. The cosmic balance is currently recalibrating its immense power, and it is aligning its force decisively with you, not with their fading narratives. Their endless, toxic interference was unknowingly converted into your greatest elevation point. Their deliberate sabotage served not as a roadblock, but as perfectly placed, stable stepping stones for your climb. Their deep-seated bitterness and envy became the precise, necessary blueprint for your ultimate success. If you are truly, authentically ready to claim this inevitable, powerful ascent, chosen one, you need to lock in this energy. Press the like button and subscribe to anchor yourself. Let's continue, because this is the exact moment where their paralyzing, gnawing fear is transformed into the undeniable, pure momentum that propels your future. Before we delve into the deeper, more profound layers of this message, chosen one, I need you to pause and take one decisive moment. What is coming next is so deeply connected to your inner truth that many of you will physically feel a distinct, vibrational shift in your spine. You are standing right on the precipice of a fundamental life shift, a transformation so monumental it is guaranteed to shock every person who arrogantly believed you would never successfully make it this far. If you want this powerful, accelerating momentum to continue building without obstruction, you must do one definitive thing right now. Lock yourself completely into this powerful energy. Hit that like button, subscribe so that more chosen ones can find their way to this message, and drop the number 99 in the comments section to anchor your focus and intention. That single, small, deliberate action signals to the universe that you are far more than just a passive observer watching your story unfold. You are actively claiming and accepting the immense transformation that is rapidly approaching and already unfolding within your reality. If you are genuinely one of the rare few who possess this unique inner wiring, you will not click away or allow yourself to be distracted now. Not when the very truth capable of fundamentally altering the entire direction of your life is mere seconds away from full, undeniable revelation. Chosen one, we must immediately address the one part of your story they desperately hoped you would never speak of publicly. The harsh, transformative reality of how you survived what was systematically designed to crush you permanently. You didn't just survive, you organically outgrew it, you profoundly evolved past it, and you masterfully transmuted that intended destruction into the exact fuel that now poses a significant threat to the carefully guarded comfort zone of everyone who actively wished for your failure. People love to put on a performance, pretending they were your most loyal rooters from the very beginning, but your true story makes them inherently nervous because it uncomfortably exposes a truth. They weren't merely entertaining doubts about you. They were quietly, confidently placing heavy bets against your success. Let's dismantle this fragile illusion completely. They didn't stop at simply testing your patience. They meticulously studied it, poking and prodding at your established limits, like someone aggressively tests a weak fence they fully expect to snap. They relentlessly pushed against your natural innocence as if it were a fragile button they could jam until you finally broke. They draped a suffocating coat of undeserved guilt over your shoulders, a heavy garment you never once asked to wear. They whispered their malicious rumors with the bold, arrogant confidence of people who truly believed they would never be held accountable or exposed for their actions. They actively tried to bury you under an unbearable weight of pressure, convinced that your muffled struggles would never be heard beneath the strain. Yet, while they exchanged smirks behind closed doors, assured that your silence meant total defeat, you were engaged in a far more potent and dangerous activity. You were observing. You saw the blatant betrayal, meticulously wrapped in superficial politeness. You clearly saw the fake concern dripping with calculated self-interest and ulterior motives. You cataloged exactly who seemed to applaud or celebrate when life delivered its hardest blows. You noted precisely who vanished the moment you were forced to fight alone, but you chose not to publicize it. Chosen ones rarely feel the need to broadcast their findings. You didn't engage in petty warfare to ruin their reputations. You simply allowed their own verifiable actions to handle that inevitable, self-destructive task. You strategically chose not to swing back because your purpose was not to waste energy fighting fleeting shadows. Your mission was to decisively rise above them all. That conscious choice is what truly shook them. While they were busy manufacturing fictional, harmful stories about your character, you were silently constructing a life that is fundamentally beyond their access or control. While they were busy meticulously crafting destructive traps, you were expertly mastering the art of perfect timing. While they were openly laughing at your visible, painful wounds, you were immediately turning every single one of them into strategic blueprints for your next move. Every scar you earned became a powerful part of your strategic playbook. Every difficult setback was instantly converted into leverage for your future advancement. Every quiet, lonely night became a focused training ground for your spirit and mind. You weren't simply recovering from injury, you were undergoing a profound re-engineering process. You were being rebuilt into someone who is completely immune to manipulation by sweet words or superficial lies. Someone who will not compromise their core values for mere approval. Someone whose presence alone forces every pretender in the room to adjust their posture, because they feel the tectonic shift in power and clarity before you even speak a word. And now, the consequences have arrived. They are fully feeling the repercussions of their own harmful actions. The intentional silence that now surrounds you is not a sign of distance. It is pure, debilitating fear. A visceral fear of being completely exposed without you ever needing to say a single word. A fear of being measured against the magnificent, resilient version of yourself they were convinced they had utterly broken. A fear of your now unbreakable resilience, your crystal clear clarity, and your exponential growth trajectory. Most terrifying of all is the realization that everything they tried to weaponize against you has organically become the singular reason you now stand decisively above them. Let's be unequivocally clear. You earned this elevation through sheer effort. You survived smiles that hid malicious knives. You survived people who praised you enthusiastically in public, but were consumed by envy in private. You survived toxic environments deliberately constructed to drain your spirit. And now, your unstoppable rise stands as the longest, loudest reminder that every calculated attempt to bury you only functioned to teach you the most dangerous skill of all: how to thrive and grow precisely where they never, ever expected anything powerful or beautiful to bloom. Chosen one, let's establish a brutally clear, unvarnished truth. The powerful fire burning deep within your soul was never, ever meant to die out or be extinguished. It was not a temporary phase you would simply outgrow. It was not a fleeting moment of inspiration, and it was certainly not a character weakness to be apologized for. That sacred internal flame was meticulously engineered to expose every artificial limitation your critics placed around you, and to fiercely burn through every protective wall they built with the singular intention of keeping your potential small and contained. People genuinely expected you to eventually cool down, settle back into comfortable mediocrity, politely sit down, and ultimately disappear from their sight. They believed that the relentless battles you were forced to face would completely exhaust you, not serve to refine and strengthen your core. That fundamental mistake in judgment is one that will continue to haunt them with regret for a very long time. Your flame did not fade into nothingness. Instead, it became intensely focused and concentrated. Every severe challenge you successfully survived acted like a crucial blast of oxygen. Every act of betrayal sharpened the fire's heat. Every painful setback carved out a new, immense temperature inside your spirit that even you didn't know you possessed until it was necessary. They observed your struggles and immediately assumed the fire was slowly dying. They failed to realize it was strategically condensing into something far more potent and dangerous than mere rage: absolute precision, unshakable clarity, and unstoppable direction. Think of yourself as a powerful torch in a pitch-black tunnel. Most people would descend into panic when the tunnel collapses, but you learned the essential skill of navigating solely by your own generated light. You learned which connections would scorch you and which ones would genuinely warm your spirit. You learned that sometimes the intense fire is not meant to comfort you. Its primary purpose is to forcefully clear the destructive path ahead. And here is the absolute fact that shocks people most profoundly. The very flame they tried to use as a weapon against your existence is now the singular, undeniable reason you are utterly unstoppable. They grievously underestimated the profound chemistry of a chosen one's transformation. They foolishly assumed that intense heat always signified fragility or weakness. They never once imagined it meant complete, permanent transformation. Now they are forced to watch you ascend, rising gracefully through the smoke of everything they deliberately set ablaze, realizing their mistake far too late. None of their actions broke you. Every single one of them built you into who you are now. Your flame was never intended to fade. It was always meant to melt every limitation that dared to try and contain your power. Chosen one, let's establish a non-negotiable understanding right now. Every single door that slammed shut loudly in your face was never a final rejection of your worth or destiny. It was, in every instance, a mandatory relocation order. You were not ultimately denied entry. You were strategically redirected to a superior path. And the very people who interpreted those loudly closed doors as irrefutable proof that you were not good enough are about to be consumed by the irony of watching you flourish and ascend in a place they never, ever had the capacity or access to reach themselves. When you are a chosen soul, The universe operates to strategically remove you from any places or positions that fundamentally lack the capacity to match your rapidly growing potential. This removal is not conducted gently or passively, but with surgical, decisive strategy. Doors do not merely shut softly, they aggressively lock themselves, hermetically seal themselves, and sometimes disappear from your reality entirely. Why does this happen? Because you were never meant to shrink your immense presence to fit into confining rooms that could barely hold a fraction of your true potential. You were never meant to bend your spirit or compromise your standards to fit into opportunities explicitly built for people who fear growth and cling to mediocrity. But let's discuss the single part that utterly shocks your critics. You not only survived every loudly closed door they celebrated, but you thrived. Every time they smugly whispered, "See, they're finally finished," you were, in fact, being quietly and precisely positioned for something too immense, too powerful, to share space with their small-minded intentions. While they were actively applauding what they perceived as your failure, a significantly grander path was clearing itself completely behind the scenes, a path that had zero room for their limiting opinions, their artificial boundaries, or their persistent sabotage. Your enemies genuinely believed those shutting doors would finally break your spirit. Instead, you acquired a dangerous new form of wisdom: how to decisively walk away from anything that no longer serves your highest purpose without ever looking back. You learned how to immediately stop begging for entry into places that were clearly beneath your genuine potential. You learned how to wholeheartedly trust the powerful, invisible pull of something far greater than the temporary comfort you were desperately trying to cling to. And now, the very same people who counted on those closed doors to permanently halt your progress are about to witness the undeniable operational difference of a chosen one. We do not chase after structures that are clearly collapsing. We do not attempt to force entry where there is profound, obvious resistance. We do not fight to remain in environments where exponential growth is structurally impossible. We outgrow, we uproot, we rise. And that realization, right there, is exactly what is going to utterly shock them into silence. Chosen one, here is the potent truth that causes your enemies to tense up in nervous anticipation before you even part your lips. The truth you have been carrying is not soft, conveniently palatable, or easy for others to process and swallow. It is sharp and powerful enough to cut straight through the elaborate years-long performances people have been hiding behind. The truth you have been patiently holding back is the very thing that exposes the structural weakness of everything they meticulously built upon a foundation of lies. And that is the entire, singular reason they worked so tirelessly and aggressively to silence you. It wasn't because you were factually incorrect in your observations, but because you were right in a manner that posed an existential threat to their entire, fabricated illusion. You have emerged victorious from situations that, by all accounts, should have violently snapped you in half. You walked through toxic environments where deliberate lies seemed to crawl along the very walls and cruel whispers were used with the precision of lethal weapons. You clearly saw the authentic, ugly mask hidden behind the charming smile. You instantly noticed the subtle, insidious shift in their tone the very second your back was turned. And every single time you tried to convince yourself internally that the situation was not as bad as your instincts warned, the truth relentlessly tugged on your sleeve, offering a firm, consistent reminder. You were not imagining any of it. You were witnessing the full, ugly reality. And here is the critical fact they never wanted to accept about you. You were quiet not because you were paralyzed by fear. You were quiet because you were strategically collecting unshakable clarity and undeniable evidence. You were deliberately allowing their actions to fully reveal their true, dark nature. You were waiting for the truth to fully mature, because truth possesses a far more devastating impact when it arrives fully grown, without the need for apology or explanation. The very moment you begin to speak from that place of ultimate clarity, chains will fall, not just the chains they placed on you, but their own self-imposed chains will shatter. Shame breaks, confusion dissolves, manipulation crumbles, the emotional fog clears, and suddenly, Everyone watching clearly sees exactly who was responsible for the damage and, most importantly, who heroically survived it. And that sudden clarity is what truly shakes them. The fact that the truth they tried so desperately to bury is now powerfully rising up and speaking through you, that your newly claimed voice is no longer a fearful whisper in the dark. It is an unblinking, unforgiving mirror that reflects reality. And when chosen ones decide to speak, long-held illusions inevitably collapse under the undeniable weight of veracity. Chosen one of the most profound and disturbing shocks your enemies will face is the sudden realization that the deeply flawed, dark character they tried so hard to cast you as no longer exists in reality. They desperately needed a scapegoat, a villain, and you were convenient because you were too observant, too powerfully intuitive, and far too difficult for them to successfully manipulate or control. You instantly became the easiest and most accessible target for their own deep-seated insecurities, because you innately possessed a form of spiritual power they couldn't name yet feared instinctively. Since they knew they couldn't successfully control you, they made a determined effort to control the story surrounding you. They projected their own numerous, deep flaws and moral failures onto your shadow, and then falsely labeled that projection as the absolute truth of who you are. They maliciously twisted your intentional silence into a sign of guilt, and redefined your healthy, necessary boundaries as outright selfishness. They grossly exaggerated your inevitable human mistakes, while conveniently shrinking or outright ignoring their own catastrophic errors. They painted you as entirely unpredictable because your continued, unstoppable growth violently exposed the shallow limits of their own stagnant comfort zone. The fact is, you were never the villain in your own life story. They simply could not handle how clearly and effortlessly you were able to see through their elaborate facade. Yet, here is the powerful truth they never once factored into their destructive script. Chosen ones do not stay confined to the restrictive roles that others attempt to assign them. While they were busy rehearsing and scripting your inevitable downfall, you were outgrowing and transcending their entire miserable plot. While they meticulously rehearsed their practiced lies, you were actively and courageously rewriting your entire identity in real time. And now, the magnificent version of you standing here presents an undeniable threat, not because you are inherently dangerous or vengeful, but because you are uncompromisingly honest. And absolute honesty is the single element their fragile, manipulative narratives cannot possibly survive. What shocks them most is not merely that you survived their onslaught, it is that you have completely stopped playing along with their manufactured drama. You deliberately ceased dimming your own magnificent light just to protect their temporary comfort. You stopped absorbing blame for things that were never your responsibility. You stopped carrying a toxic reputation that was entirely built by people who never deserved even a moment of access to your genuine truth. Now, your mere presence is enough to completely ruin their storyline. Your continued growth exposes their true, insidious motives. Your unshakable clarity dissolves their carefully crafted illusions. You didn't just reject the villain role. They are now realizing, with horror, that they were the ones writing the fiction all along, and the world is finally starting to read the real, compelling story, your story. Chosen one, here is the masterful plot twist for which they were absolutely unprepared. You were never